You'll give that property to the social housing association and they'll after just find out the tenants themselves, right? You don't deal with that part anymore.
Not at all. We need to know what kind of tenant profile we're dealing with.
Would you mind to share what training did you do if somebody else wants to maybe know what you done?
Yeah, sure. So at the time, we got into property, just to give you a bit of backstory. You have to be an action taker. If you think you can or you think you can't, you're right.
He said he would put an offer, they would refuse it every single time, pretty much. And after he would just tell them, it's okay, no problem. Think of me as the plan B. If your first plan A doesn't work, think of me as the plan B.
They were a young couple, first-time buyers. They were looking for a house.
Thank you very much, Jackie, for coming to this podcast. Would you mind sharing with us what is it you are doing on a daily basis, and so we can get to know you a little bit more?
Oh, absolutely. So we run a property business. Our main focus is buy-to-let for social housing. Okay. So we buy for our own portfolio, but we also help others to invest. If they want to invest in property, if they want a social housing contract put on, we can do all that for them. So it's a win-win for everybody. It's commercially a great way for investors because there's a lot less risk. It's a 5-year lease. It's guaranteed rent. It means that there's no management fee because the housing association deal with it. There's very little maintenance because, again, the housing association deal with it. So people quite often look and go, oh, well, it's lower rent. Yes, it probably is slightly lower, but there's also a lot of costs that you're not having to fork out for. Therefore, over a period of time, you actually get better returns. You're also giving a good home to somebody who needs it. And like I said, commercially, it works really well. So for us, it's the best strategy out there. We do a little bit of private rental as well, because again, there's a lot of demand for private rental too. But social housing with all the renters reform changes and everything else, it's a really secure way of getting into property, running a portfolio, and giving something back at the same time. So we love it. So most of our days are formed with looking for property, talking to investors, talking to vendors, talking to the housing association, and pulling all the parts together. So as it's Valentine's Day, we like to say we're a dating agency.
Okay, amazing. And can I ask you, Jackie, how long are you already doing that in this social housing space?
Okay, so we started doing property, we did some training in 2017. Bought our first investment property 2018. At that time, a bit more difficult to get into social housing straight off because yes, there was demand, but I don't think it was such a popular strategy, and getting into housing associations was more difficult. So as time has gone on, it's something that we've really been working on. So we've probably been doing it for 3 years on the social housing side.
All right, perfect. So, and in those 3 years, how many units have you been able to acquire, for example, so somebody know what is possible?
Okay, so like I said, we do it for ourselves. So we've got our own social housing units. We do it for our portfolio building clients, but we also work with other property builders, portfolio builders, other landlords to take on properties through them as well. So we've probably done around and about 60 to 70 properties for social housing in the 3 years. So
wow.
Yeah. So we focus very much. Our main area is Bradford and Keighley, but then we work with landlords and sourcing agents in Leeds and Wakefield as well. So that's kind of the core area that the housing association we deal with work in. It's very, very much family let. We're not doing HMOs. We're not doing high risk tenants. So there's very much a space for that, absolutely. But what we're focusing on is people who've fallen on hard times, maybe refugees, asylum seekers, victims of a domestic abuse. So
Mm-hmm.
they're much more a low risk tenant than something like ex-cons or drug and alcohol abusers, or
But is it the you'll give that property to the social housing association and they will after just find out the tenants themselves, right? You don't deal with that part anymore.
not at all, not at all.
Yeah.
We need to know what kind of tenant profile we're dealing with, because we still have to insure the building. So the mortgage lenders like to know who's going to be in there. Even more importantly, the insurers like to know who's going to be in there, because obviously the higher the risk, the more they charge. So
Yes.
it's important that we know what profile of tenant is there. But most of our tenants are, I mean, they do change sometimes, and I don't know them, but we know that tenants that have come in have been victims of domestic abuse. We've had Ukrainian refugees come in. And like I say, sometimes it's just families
Sure. And
on a hard time.
so when you do this social housing, so would you first go and speak to these social housing associations to see if there is a demand, if they would take your property, and after you look for that property? Because if you do it the other way around, you are not sure if they will take it, right?
Exactly. It's quite hard getting into social housing associations, which seems counterintuitive because there's such a demand up there. You think that everybody is going to talk to anybody who's got a property. Sadly, a lot of landlords who perhaps have got a property they can't rent out think, oh, well, it'll be right for social housing, I'll just pass it on. And they're not good enough. Actually, the standard that you need for social housing, to some degree, is better than you actually need for private rental. Now, for us, I don't want anybody dying on our watch, whether it's private or social. So we put in the same sort of criteria, the same refurb for all our properties. But it's things like you need fire doors on risk rooms, you need escape windows, you need to make sure that you've got enough sockets because you don't want to overload the electrics, you don't want trailing wires. So it's about making properties as safe and secure and nice for people to live in that they can call home. So we're not dealing with what I would call the old DSS tenants, universal credit tenants. Not because there's anything wrong there, but we've just chosen to take that sort of midpoint with the clients that we deal with. So social housing falls into three fields. At the very top of the tree, you've got supported living, where there's much higher requirement in terms of what needs to be done to a property. It's more for people who have got physical disabilities. They need carers on a much higher level. Maybe if they've got autistic children, then the rooms need to have more sensory adaptations, that sort of thing. So we're not doing that top level. We're not doing the basic level, which is your DSS universal credit tenant, who are effectively a private tenant that pay you the rent direct, because you don't have that additional security that you get from a lease with a housing association.
Yes.
We're doing the bit in the middle. They need some support. They will have a care worker working with them, but they're not a living carer. They're probably not doing a daily bit, but they're having some support to make sure they're okay and that they're fine with what they're doing. If they need any help, then obviously that comes through.
Yeah. Okay. And so, for example, would you mind to share if somebody would like to start and they want to buy their first property and it's in a location, what kind of a return on investment they can expect from investment like that?
Okay. It will vary from area to area. So if you think of a monopoly board, if you buy in Mayfair, the house prices are far too high. You're not going to get the rent to cover it, so it ain't going to work.
Yes.
On the other hand, if you're buying in Old Kent Road, the cheapest areas, again, we wouldn't buy there for two reasons. One, as an investor, you're not going to get the capital growth that adds to your return on investment. But also, these are the areas that are probably the highest risk areas in any city. So you don't want to be putting families with children into properties where you've maybe got drug dealers at one end of the street, prostitutes at the other end of the street, there's high crime rates. So we're looking more, those middling, the blue properties, the orange properties, the purple properties that are not right at the top end, but they're higher than those worst areas. And in those areas, the rent is equivalent, or the returns are equivalent to private rental, and you're getting the capital growth. So you're getting that return on investment in two ways. Because we're social housing, rent is generally based on the LHA rate, the local housing authority rate. So if you can imagine where we are in Bradford, the housing rate is going to be much, much lower than it is in London. So every council has its own LHA rate. Starting point, you need to Google LHA rates, and it will come up with a whole list of every council in the country and what their rate is for a room, if you are doing HMO, a 1-bed, a 2-bed, a 3-bed, a 4-bed. And then you can see what rent you're going to get. That's a guide. So some housing associations will pay a bit more, some will pay the basic rate. It gives you a starting point. And remember, when looking at the councils, like Bradford Council is Bradford Council on the list, but somewhere like Blackburn is actually Hindburn Council. So you've got to remember some of them have different names. But that's your starting point. It's always going to work better in cheaper cities than it is in expensive cities. In Bradford, it's a relatively low entry price point to buy property. So you've got a lot of options to go at here. If you buy in Oxford or Cambridge, a bit more challenging, even though the LHA rate's higher, just your property prices are so expensive. So your returns are going to be a lot less. But the key is to find the housing association, talk to them, and find out what they're looking for. What do they want? What do they need? How much do they pay? What are their responsibilities? And what are your responsibilities? And
would you advise someone to approach those housing associations, just Google them online and just send them like an email, call them and just start the conversation from there? Or would you really want to get to build a relationship from somewhere else?
So what I would suggest is going on something like LinkedIn and actually searching for housing associations in your area. When you've then found them, find their page on LinkedIn and go to people and look for, depending on the size of the association, either the CEO, if it's a smaller association, or the property manager. And just contact them, make a connection with them, say that you're interested in working with them for social housing, you'd like to set up a Zoom, understand what they're looking for, what their tenant profile is, what you can do to help, and how you can work together. And if you do it very much from the listening perspective, because a lot of people make the mistake of going in and going, I've got this property, it does this, it does that, do you want it?
Yeah.
It's the wrong way round.
Yeah, I had one situation actually. We took one property in Durham, and we called this council. They're supposed to come from the housing association to check the property if it's going to be suitable, if they would like to take it. And first time they didn't show up. We were waiting. And second time they didn't show up. So we were like, oh, so we wanted to give them that property. They never showed up. So we just rented out for a long-term rent. But we wanted to test it, and twice they didn't show up. I'm like, what's going on? So I was very disappointed with that council or with that person who's supposed to come. And yeah, that's my experience with social housing.
Directly with councils is the most difficult way to operate. People say to me, oh, I'll contact the council. Seriously, do you really want to work with the council?
Yeah, yeah.
Because
And also,
you?
yeah, you mentioned you started in 2017 with some training. Would you mind to share what training did you do if somebody else wants to maybe know what you done?
Yeah, sure. So at the time, we got into property, just to give you a bit of backstory. We'd done a property, I don't know, maybe 10 years before. The typical, we've watched Homes Under the Hammer. Oh, we can do that and make some money.
Yeah.
So we did a flip. It was fine. We got some money out of it, happy days. But we just did it as a one-off. Then at the time, I was a florist, I had my own florist. We were big into florists in the area. My husband was a project manager for Lloyds Bank. He was working in IT. He was working on the TSB project that they were hiving off. It wasn't his fault, everything that went wrong. I just want to add. So he then had the choice of, do you take another job in the bank or do you take voluntary redundancy? And he'd not been there that long as an employee because he had been a contractor previously. So it wasn't a massive amount of redundancy. And he's like, well, I don't know what to do. Like, to be blunt, take the money. They're paying you to leave. You hate your job. You're a miserable bastard. Take the money and let's do something different. And as the universe would have it, it then popped up on Facebook or Instagram or whatever that there was some training in the area, 2 hours free training on how to get into property. So we'd already thought, yeah, we could do property. We could buy a house, do it up, sell it, buy a house, do it up, sell it. The problem with doing that, all your money goes into buying a house. You have no income while you're refurbishing it. And then you sell it. Yes, you get some money back. And then you do it all again. So logistically, you can't really do more than 2 properties a year unless you're a builder or whatever. So you're very limited with time constraint and money constraint. But it seemed like a good idea. Then we did this property free training. And he came back, he did it, not me. He came back and he said, oh, it's really good. There's all these different strategies we can do. There's all these things we've never thought of. It's amazing. I booked us onto a three-day event. It cost £1,000. But
when you are speaking, Jackie, I have exactly the same journey. I also been on a 2 hours training in Edinburgh, and after for 3 days training in Glasgow, and after I didn't continue for 35,000. I'm excited to see what you're gonna say.
Yeah, I did. So we went on the 3-day training. We paid our £1,000. We got our free tablet or whatever it was.
Yeah,
did the training and loved it. Absolutely loved it. We were just like, this is amazing. We've got to do this. So, you know, where, talk about gullible, you know, the bit where they say, oh, you know, if you run to the back of the room and you sign up.
Yeah. I've done it many times on different events, but for that one I didn't, because I didn't like something about that company. They are not here anymore, to be honest. They are gone. But there was ridiculously high entrance. Sorry?
I wonder if it was the same company.
Yeah, maybe. I'm not gonna share others, so they are.
Well, no, seriously, they've gone. The ones we did, they've gone.
Yeah, okay. Because it seems very similar, so maybe they'll be the same company. Yeah. But that is obviously, when you speak about it, I think, like, some people they think like, yeah, I'll just do it myself. I don't need any training and things like that. And these trainings are there for a reason, right? So I also myself do some coaching for business owners, and we are doing it because we know there are people who don't know anything and they need that guidance, and it could be from property training. And yes, they'll be bad and good. But the thing is, like you said, like, you only knew about flips from the show, and then now you know about all of these strategies. And if you wouldn't go, you wouldn't know what possibility you can do, right?
Exactly. And that's the thing. You don't know what you don't know.
Yeah.
So there's loads of free training out there, and good training. Some of it's very good. But equally, there's some of it's very bad, and people talk rubbish.
Yeah.
and you don't know what's good and you don't know what's bad. You can't
Yeah.
differentiate. And like I say, you don't know what you don't know. So the training we had taught us a lot. We learned a lot from it. We bought 8 properties in our first year. So,
Oh, nice.
you know, we're old, so we were running out of time. So when we did the training in 2017, I would have been 56 and Steve would have been
Okay.
51. So we're definitely, you know, the back end of what people think of as prime time for property investors. But
Hmm.
we knew we had to go for it. You had to make it happen. Nobody's doing it for you. And the trouble is, a lot of people do training and kind of think it's all coming on a plate. And then if it doesn't happen, it don't work. No,
Yeah.
you have to take
Yeah.
action. That's the
Yeah.
point. You
I love
have to
that.
be an action taker.
Yes.
So we did that. Then at the end of that kind of training period, they were rubbish at coming back to us and saying, well, you're near the end of the training. Why don't you do this? Why don't you do that? We just fell off the
Hmm.
cliff. So in COVID, Jamie York was just starting up with Aspire. So
Hmm.
I was like, do I do it or not? We've done a lot of training. We kind of bought a lot of properties. We kind of know what we're doing. Shall I do it? What else do you do in COVID? So jumped on, did the training. Absolutely amazing. Best training in terms of value for money. It was like
Mm.
brilliant information, and not so much on each different strategy where they keep repeating
Hmm.
what they're telling you, but how to build a property business.
Yeah.
And
Yes.
it was
Yes.
like, this is how you set your company up. This is how you get
Mm.
compliant. This is how you choose what you're doing. And this is how
Mm.
you make it into a business, how you
Mm.
systemize, how you automate. And
Yes.
they're still
You
running
are
the course
right.
today.
This is very important what you are saying because I've never done anything with Jamie York. I've seen his videos. He seems very genuine and
Yeah.
as a person. So this is amazing. Uh, I don't I don't do any more property trainings, but it's like you are saying, there's a lot of property knowledge out there. So people get into this strategy or this strategy. So yes, they know the strategy. They know, let's say, how to acquire a property or do rent to rent or do social housing or do these things, but they don't know how to do a business. And after it's all falling apart because they don't know how to handle all of these things, like you are saying, systematizations. And this is what we were learning as well with our property business to know how to run it as a proper business. And it's something what it's missing. That's why I also do this business coaching, because I see it's missing a lot in a lot of businesses, not just
So,
property. And so it's good to hear that actually Jamie York is teaching you all of those skills.
yeah,
So it's like a fool, right?
yeah, definitely. And I think the good thing with them, well, apart from the fact we now we mentor for them as well, so obviously it's brilliant.
Yeah.
But the thing is, they are very predominantly a property company that has an education arm. So they're
Mm-hmm.
doing so many deals themselves. They're doing like 50 deals a month.
Wow.
They
Yeah.
know what they're doing. And if something
Yeah.
stops working because the market's changed or something, interest rates have changed or whatever, they're tweaking with what they do. Because if they didn't,
Mm-hmm.
their main business wouldn't operate. And then they pass that on through the training. So
Yes.
always the training is most up to date. Like now they're
Mhm.
including bits on AI because AI is so important. If you're not going to bring AI
Yeah.
into your business, you're
Mhm.
going to get left behind. You're so
Yeah.
going
Yeah.
to get left behind. So all of this like innovation and continuous improvement is what makes that training so good. And
And also the community, right? Being able to meet with those same people or like
yeah,
new people, but like being in that peer group, because very often I've been on a training years ago. It was with Samuel Leeds, and it was a good training and good knowledge, good value. And there was 200 people in that paid training, and we set up these weekly Zoom calls that we said like, okay, let's hold each other accountability every Monday. So
yeah,
the first Monday there was 12 of us from 200, and second Monday it was only 4 of us, and the
yeah.
third Monday I was there alone. I'm like, where is all these people? And
I know.
and
And
it's
that is
just
so important.
yeah,
Accountability is
yeah,
key. Consistency and accountability are what makes the difference between people who are successful and people
Yeah.
who kind of fall by the wayside, like you've just said, you think how much people pay for training generally, not just with Aspire, or there's loads
Yeah.
of training companies out there, a lot of them charging a lot of money. And how many people actually stick with it? And that's the difference between the people who are successful and the people who go, oh, it don't work. It does work.
Yeah.
You just have
Yeah.
to do it, and having somebody hold you accountable, because the way we do it, we rather than deliver 2 or 3 days in a room and you're like bombarded, our modules over a period of 12 weeks. So people are learning in like 3-hour pockets, which is manageable. You can take it in, you do a bit of homework to actually make sure you understand it. Again, if you've got a question, you ask the question in the Facebook group, and we have a policy that we answer within 24 hours. Because I've been in other training and you ask a question and it's like, hello, is anybody here? Because you don't get any reply. And that's so infuriating. So we really make sure that we've got a policy that we answer people quickly. And then, we're there to help them every single step of the way. And we cover mindset as well. Because you've got to have the right mindset. You think Henry Ford, if you think you can or you think you can't, you're right. And people think, I mean, I was guilty of mindset, not sure about all the tree hugging, airy fairy stuff. But when I realized the difference it makes, all the manifestation, the visualization, the positive thinking, the gratitude, I thought it's all a bit wacky-backy and it's not for me. But then I read a book called, have you heard of The Secret?
Yes.
Yeah, loads of people have heard of The Secret and there's a film and everything. But Rhonda Byrne also wrote a book called The Magic. And The Magic is very much same kind of ideas, but in a very structured way. So rather than just people talking about it, it is, right, on day 1, do this. Okay. On day 2, do this and what you did on day 1. On day 3, do this, and day 2 and day 1. And you build it up over the month. And it's, setting habits, it's 21, 28 days to maintain a habit or to create a habit. So you do, you create this habit of gratitude, and it makes such a difference. I mean, Steve's very sort of, used to be very sort of skeptical about it all, and he was a bit like, the tree hugging stuff. But I started
especially in here in UK.
Yeah, very much. Yeah, totally. But then he came in.
I follow a lot of USA people. I'm a big fan of Tony Robbins and do a lot of events with him. And it's like people are awesome. It's like they are all into it. But when in the UK you speak with some people, they're like, no. I live in Scotland, so in here it's even worse. It's like, no, I don't believe in that shit.
Yeah, absolutely. The Americans are very much like celebrating your successes and everything else. Here, it's like, oh no, you put people down, and we'll just keep going to the underdog. And being good and successful is like you become a target for people to have a go. So, but you have to remain positive. You have to think positive. And I mean, a few things happened that, Steve came in and he's like, keep doing what you're doing. Whatever it is, keep doing it. We just won the lottery. Well, to be fair, we haven't just won the lottery, but we'd won a tenner, which we hadn't done for years. So that was a bonus. And then there's a house that we went to view, and it was perfect for us in that it was a house above with a flat underneath. And we're like, well, that's great because we can put a family upstairs. And then the flat you entered from its own front door on the other side of the house, other side, a different street, we could put a homeless person in there. And we're helping 2 vulnerable people, 2 vulnerable sets of people. And it works really well for us. Commercially, it's really viable. So we put in an offer and it was like, no, it's not enough, that they want higher offers, etc. So we just kept following it up. Again, the key is in the follow-up, kept following it up. And then this was October time, about 2 weeks before Christmas, the estate agent phoned up and they went, are you still interested in that house? The sale's just fallen over, and if you're interested, then you could have it. So there we go. We still have that house today, and it's a great cash flowing property. So
money is in the follow-up.
Money is always in the follow-up, always, but visualize it as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, definitely.
I remember I was doing one training. It was with one USA person. His name is Dean Graziosi, and he is also in property. This is how he started, building his business. And he was sharing this the same, like when he was putting an offers on. So it was always low. Obviously, investors put low offers, otherwise it's not an investment.
Yeah.
Very often. So he said he would put an offer, they would refuse it every single time, pretty much. And after he would just tell them, that's okay, no problem. Think of me as the plan B. If your first plan A doesn't work, think of me as the plan B. And after he would follow up a few times, and after they would come back to him, it's like, Dean, okay, we'll be okay to accept your offer. And he was like, they are coming to me. So he wanted to negotiate even down. It's it's a very smart, very important. But a lot of people don't keep following up.
Patient. You have to be patient. We've bought houses a year after we viewed them. Literally, we've viewed and they've gone under offer with somebody else and it's fallen over. We've gone, we continually follow up, but then we've gone, well, it's fallen over, our offer still stands. Oh, it's still too low. It's gone under offer again, it's fallen over. And, eventually, there's one deal that we did. We had the offer accepted virtually 12 months to the day after we viewed it. It was a flip we were doing, this particular one. Needed quite a lot of work. Getting a dog is a great thing for property. So we happened to be walking the dogs, met this couple and just got talking to them. They were a young couple, first-time buyers. They were looking for a house. They came and we told them where it was. It looked different outside and everything. Loved it. We actually sold them the house before we bought it.
Oh, wow.
But we did all
that's what you want.
Middle, so we had a guaranteed exit. So it's like, well, we're buying it for this. They're going to buy it for this after all the work's done. We gave them choices. We said, well, this is what we would have allowed for that refurb. So we would have put this kitchen in, that bathroom, etc. If you want to upgrade, that's up to you. But obviously you just pay the difference. So that's what happened. And we did it all and they bought it. So happy days. That was a great deal.
Awesome. So I think we are finishing like half an hour. So I think it's going to be fine for the listeners to listen. So I would like to say thank you very much for sharing all this information, especially regarding the social housing, because it's something even I don't know much about, and it's good to know people who are doing it. So because people can ask questions, so I know I can pass the information to you, and after you can deal with them, because I don't want to deal with everything. And so it was very good you share the knowledge. It was really good. Like I really like the idea, social housing, but go on LinkedIn, search the people, connect with them first, build a relationship, find what they need, listen, and after go and find it and make some money from that as a property investor. So it was great. Thank you very much for sharing everything.
Pleasure. Honestly, if anybody's got any questions at any time, feel free to get in touch. Happy to answer anything. So all good. Thank you. We'll
obviously include your details in the description so people can get in touch with you. You'll share that with me and I'll put it over there. Perfect.
Do you want me to just pop on an email? Do you want me to stick like a headshot thing on an email? And
I'll just stop the recording.